Are we going to miss 1 week or 2?
Just 1 week.
Okay.
So let me reiterate that real quickly for Judy West just came in too. So next week we won't have a class, but we will the week after that. Okay.
Okay.
So I was
by
struck
then
by,
we should be able to finish all of the chapters.
yeah,
Yeah.
we should be able to. I was struck by a line in this this chapter. We're doing the one on lunch, money, faith, and then later light breezes. I was struck by one line that said, I just can't give up, but what is the option? How many of you, at least at some point or another this year, with all the stuff, wanted to just give up in some way or another? Yeah, and realized essentially what she just said, but I can't just do that. But what are the other options? What do we do in the face of things that are not perfect, wonderful, good, the way we wish? How many, for example, PJ and I were just talking about how bodies are not quite the same as they used to be. And you have to deal with more aches and pains, right? How many wish that you didn't have to deal with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But what's the option is essentially her point here. So what do we do in the midst of whatever exhaustion, whatever anger, whatever afraidness life sends at us? What do we do is the essence of this.
I go out and find peace and quiet in the backyard. I draw a picture or write a poem. I avoid what I did. We were talking last night about whether or not we wanted to watch the news or not. Well, we like to watch the local weather, which is kind of funny. And but we just get tired of all the disasters that happen, which are part of it. I realize is the viewer polls that they want to have a lot of people watching so that the newscast will be better. They think. I don't know.
One of the things that helps Joni, I think, is because she likes watching news better than what I do. I like getting my news other ways, but she watches the channel with Gail King. Is that CBS? And they do right at the beginning of the hour all the news in 90 seconds. So you have only 90 seconds worth of you have to listen to.
That's good.
So you get all the high points without getting without having to invest a lot of time. I think that there's something wise about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll try that.
So
And it's on CBS, huh?
I think it's CBS. It's whichever one Gail King is on.
Yeah, I think it's CBS.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also have a thing that comes through email from CNN, 5 things that you need to know today or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a paragraph about each thing. And that kind of keeps me up to date when I'm willing to even look at it.
Yeah. Well, and the reality is that because somebody says it's the most important things to listen to doesn't mean it necessarily is.
That's right.
Right?
For you.
For you.
Not for
That's
you.
right. It may be really important in some ways, but maybe
Yeah.
not as essential as what that newscaster is saying. Because in some ways, that newscaster is doing advertisement. They're trying to do what makes you listen to them.
That's right.
And advertisement is always a bit jaded because it's trying to say, I'm more important than. So listen to me.
Buy me, buy me.
Buy me, buy me. And I liked her analogy to the casino, right? When you're in the casino, and she went through that big description about how you can't find the exits easily, you can't do this, there's all these noises, and you have this cacophony of stuff. And what do you do in the midst
I
of
remember
that?
seeing cacophony. I think I've read that chapter.
Yeah, I think she used that word because I love that word. Just the
That's
word
a good
itself
word.
is the cacophony.
That's a good word.
Right? And so when you say, Sam, that you go outside, what you're essentially doing is removing yourself from the cacophony.
Yes,
And I choose to listen to life differently than just that.
yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Well, so the news is about, it's going to tell you about all the horrible things going on in the world. And that's why I like to read the Times every morning. I read the headlines enough to know what Republicans are doing, but I don't want to hear what they're actually saying. So it's like I just I read the headlines, keep on going, and then I read the human interest stuff because I think there's a lot more good. I think most of the news in the world is actually good, but what the news service has to focus on, I guess, is the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So I just kind of like I skip over enough to know what's there, and then I can choose to read the in-depth articles that I want to read about that are more human interest and things that are going on positive in the world.
You know, but we should know about the earthquake that killed 217 people, right? We should know about that. We should care about knowing that type of story. And so that's going to lead, something like that's going to lead off every newscast. And the story about how a mother helped her two kids cross the street, that's not going to do that. But we need to tell those stories as well. But they're not going to get very well broadcast, are they? So we're going to have to do a lot more small relationship building to be able to tell those stories, aren't we?
yeah,
I see those happy stories and the weather right at the end.
yeah.
Yeah. Good. One of the newscasts, no, it's not a newscast, it's more of a feature story. Oh, Deborah Norville, whatever that one is. That
Yeah.
she does right at the end, just one little story. It's often just like a less than a minute type of clip, which is just a really happy story. And do we tell that story to each other?
Also, I subscribe to Yes Magazine, which not only has a hard copy about every 2 months, but postings almost every day. And often those are about communities that are doing things that connect people.
Yeah.
Or they're also about more in-depth articles about what's happening around the world to people.
Yeah.
But the yes part of it is what people are trying to do to deal with the situation that they're in.
Yeah, nice. I think the term she used is whispers in the cacophony.
Mhm.
What are the whispers in the midst of it? And I think we have to be very intentional about telling those types of stories, right?
Mhm.
So tell me some of the whispers you've heard this last week. How is it that you've heard whispers? And it could be what Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. And he said that after 9/11 as that was that huge crash of buildings and dust everywhere. And he said, but who were the whispers of helpers that were there? What have you heard this week that way? So,
Well, I was
Wow.
wanting to tell Diane Wilson that the guest host on Jeopardy these 2 weeks is giving all the winnings to NAMI.
nice. What a wonderful thing. Thank you for that. And that's absolutely an organization that is worth supporting.
Right.
Yeah.
I figure there's no point in my giving them my $20, the thousands that they're getting from Jeopardy.
Yeah. You know, but the thing of it is, Judy, the $20 from you and me and 100,000 other people adds up,
Yes.
right? And so those little bits of good news ultimately make a wonderful message. How about the rest of you? What have you heard?
Come on, PJ. What have we heard?
I blank. I can't think.
I got a bunch of pictures of my grandkids. My son and his family have taken the kids and gone to Dinosaur National Monument.
Ah,
And they stopped at a rest area in some place on the Utah-Colorado border and sent me a bunch of pictures that they were by this big river with water in it, water flowing, lots of water. And
Water.
then
Like Snake
Wow.
River.
yeah, and they sent me pictures with splash pad. The kids were playing in this little town they stopped in and stuff. So I am just, my whispers are from nature and that kind, and my grandkids and my relationships.
Thank you, Judy, for that, because chances are that's not going to save the whole world, but it sure saves your family. Gives heart to your family, doesn't it? And through you, it gives heart to the rest of us. So thank you.
They saved my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's important because in a very real way, that's going to save us much more than some of those huge saves we try to do, right?
We had a guest yesterday from Santan, Arizona. You know where that is? Santan, right near Coolidge,
Oh, okay.
on the back road to Florence. It's the first time we've seen them in 3 years. They used to live in Tucson. They were dedicated in supporting the Mormon temple here in Tucson. We've been close friends. He's been trying to baptize me for 40 years, and he's never been able to do it. We were in Puerto Peñasco one time. He said, "Come on, Sam, get in this surf." And I said, "No way, you're going to stick my head underwater and make me a Mormon, and that won't work." He's a good man. So it was so good to see them. They both have had COVID, the real COVID. They've had it and survived. And they had it just before it came out as COVID-19. Jeannie said when she went to the hospital, they said, "Well, you know, this is something unusual. We've never seen this before, but you're doing the right thing." So they survived. And with all this, plus the fact that he's a dedicated Republican, nevertheless, we really enjoyed when they came up to the house. We hugged them. We could do that because we've been vaccinated and they didn't have to worry.
Yeah.
And we even talked about the journey. Ian and I did. We went outside and we were talking about grace and the thing that we've been reading about. I said, you know, the problem I have is that when I try to get the Bible on Google, I'm deluged with advertisements for buying different kinds of Bibles. Because, you know, he gave me the website. He said, you get the LDS Bible and you won't have any interruptions.
You just have to read. You just have to read it in the King James version. But you're right that it is a very clean site that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't mind King James version.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
But what I heard there, Sam, is that at least part of what you're saying is it is not going to be necessarily that we fix the political system because one wins over another. It's because we talk to each other across and we know good Republicans and we heal some of the spaces that way.
Yeah.
You know, that's all about personal relationship rather than the political solutions of who wins and who loses. That's good.
I have always said when Jeannie and I are around when we used to sit for dinner, long before I was into that kind of vernacular maybe, but I said, you know, when I'm with you guys, there's a definite feeling of warmth. We see the light in you, and they
Yeah.
agree. So
And do we remind
Yeah.
each other of that?
yeah,
Yeah.
I want a special prayer for Phyllis this coming week because she's going to be flying to Tulsa, and this will be the first time. Well, she's been alone before. She's flown with some of our kids, but this is a real effort she's had to be in training really because she can't over exercise.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
So that's it. And then the other thing is that you could also put in a prayer for Sam because he's going to be home alone. And I've made arrangements through Bayada that I'll have a caregiver here because if I fall or something, I'm in trouble. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a position to say, well, I should have ordered this earlier. I should have planned for this.
Yeah.
So we're planning for it ahead of time, just in case.
You know, just before I got on the Zoom, I was talking to Carolyn Iseman.
Yeah,
You know, and she's back in Ohio and she's doing well, but she told me I had to buy some more Crocs. You know why? Because she'd fallen in the shower just before she left. And so she knew that she didn't need to make sure that that didn't happen again. And that's what you're talking about is how do you now know something so that you are aware of what you wish you didn't have to be aware of, that maybe falling in the
That's
shower
right.
is possible.
Yeah.
But you take you take the precautions so that it doesn't happen.
yeah, that's right.
That's
Yeah.
sometimes what life teaches us. She said that sometimes we have to have a heart attack or get cancer to be able to rewire us. But sometimes we just have to see that threat hit somebody else, and it reminds us
That's right.
we should be careful as well, right?
Yeah,
What do we learn in the midst of whatever life is teaching around us?
yeah. You know, there's a walker. It's called a U-step, a capital U
Okay.
dash STEP,
Okay.
and it has brakes on it. Except that to make the walker go, you have to squeeze the brake.
Oh,
So that if you develop a tremor, or if you're suddenly if brakes for people that can't control their fist or whatever, because if you let go, they automatically stop.
so rather than you having to pull to stop it, that's the default. That's good.
That's right.
I like that idea.
It also comes with a laser beam for Parkinson's people that have trouble with their stepping, and get to a point where everything freezes and you can't move your feet. And you think you can, but they won't move. But for some reason, the brain sees this laser beam on the ground in front of you, and you step to the beam, and guess what? Your foot moves.
Yeah. And Sam, one of the things that gives me great hope in the world, that gets me through whatever seems to be falling apart, is that people are working every day on some of the issues that are standing in the way of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what you just said there. It's like, what do we do, you know, to make walkers better? What do we do to make life easier? You know what one of my big prayers is, right? I pray that they figure out self-driving cars before I have to give up my keys.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's possible, right? Because
Uh-huh.
that's a tough place to get to, right? When is it that you stop driving, and suddenly that gives us the ability to be independent much longer, right?
Yeah. One of the
Exactly.
guys at the
And
Parkinson's
not driving changes the whole paradigm of your life too.
Absolutely.
So, I know that.
Yeah. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening that way. Some of it mercenary, let me make some money off of you, but much of it solving some of those issues. That gives me great hope.
Yeah. Um, the Michael J. Fox comment is working with Parkinson until it's not anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Doris, you looked like you were thinking about saying something.
Oh, no, I wasn't.
Well, say something anyway.
The challenge in the midst of the cacophonies is that that takes all of our attention very easily, doesn't it?
Yeah,
There's things that yell and scream at us on a regular basis.
yeah.
And how do we train ourselves to do different? Yesterday, I was sitting with Nancy Wilkinson, and she was talking about how, as we're reopening here, what do we do? And she'd like to direct Our Town by Thornton Wilder, which is a marvelous play. If you've never seen it, you're a big loser. It's just marvelous, and I always go back to that ending part, that soliloquy at the end. So I'm going to read part of it to you, because I think that as Emily comes back from the grave and looks at her family, it's just amazing what she sees. She comes back there, sees them all sitting there in the kitchen, and she says, just for a moment now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, we're happy. Let's look at one another. And she realizes that they're all so busy that they're not quite doing that. They've all got whatever is on their agenda for the day. And so she says, I can't go on. It goes so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize all that was going on in life, and we never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait, one more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corners, Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers and food and coffee and new iron dresses and hot baths and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anyone to realize you.
Yeah.
Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it every minute? And the stage manager answers, no, the saints and poets, maybe. They do some. The question for us is, in the midst of our space, how do we find that lunch money faith? Those few coins that tell us we're going to be fed today, this lunch, even though it doesn't solve the bigger issues, how do we listen in that moment? How have you tried to slow down your heart a bit in the midst of everything? Maybe this year has taught you some things that way.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really this year because I was doing it before, but I try to have time at the beginning and the end of every day just to be quiet. In the morning, I do some reading and some writing, and then I have 15 minutes of just sitting still meditation. And then in the evening, I'm tired or I can't afford that much too much times, but I do try to sit down and write a list of things I'm grateful for from that day.
Nice.
And those two things have really helped me put a pause on all the cacophony of my life.
Yeah.
Help me be able to take a step backwards and say, you know, the franticness of today or my long undone to-do list or whatever are not that important in the broad scheme of things. So
Yeah.
that's what's helped me a lot.
And I think what's really important there, Doris, is not necessarily whatever exercises you choose to do, but the decision to intentionally do something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the exercises you've chosen have definitely helped you to intentionally be different than what you would have been without them.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's good.
Yeah. Intentionality is a huge thing, right? Because we do a whole lot of reaction to stuff. And sometimes we have to, don't we?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who used to drive quite a ways in Phoenix. She lived up somewhere up towards Sun City and had to drive down towards the center of town. So it was a long drive. And she said she intentionally tried to use that as a devotional time rather than get mad at the traffic time. Right?
Well,
But you
you're right.
can't ignore the traffic, but you can think differently during that time. And that's what she was trying to do. How about the
Yeah.
rest of you? What kind of small things are you
I'll be
doing?
back.
How are you taking time to look to the clocks ticking?
I take time to look at the birds in our backyard.
Mm,
Yeah.
We have a lot of bird feeders. And today, when the cleaning gals were here, there was a mama quail with 4 babies.
Yeah.
So I called them over and they were just thrilled to see the development of these babies and the parents that were herding them around and showing them where the food was and all that. It
nice.
was just delightful to be able to share that with others.
Yeah. And that's so important, PJ, because sometimes we get good at stopping and looking at something ourselves, but the sharing of that's huge. So thank you for reminding us of that.
It was good timing.
Yeah.
I think to follow up on what you're saying, which is absolutely right, Phyllis, I think just stopping and looking at the beauty of the place where we live. And sometimes I'm still astonished at it and am delighted that this is where I am and in this moment. And the pausing there interrupts anything else that might be going on.
And even if there's something that you're going to have to deal with, the pausing in the midst of that can give you really good strength for whatever it is that you have to deal with. Right? I love that
Right.
every hospital I know has a chapel in it, and Mary Klein, runs the one over at TMC, and I love that just because in the midst of what is out of control for whatever reason that you're in the hospital, you can stop for a second and just find a space of peace.
Yeah, and that's good.
That is a good thing, isn't it?
That's
And
really
so
good.
can we. The noise might be important, but it's not all that's true. Who else has a slow down technique or something you do that helps?
Back on May 4th, what is this? May, yeah, back in May 4th. I said, okay, I'm gonna spend each morning, I'm gonna spend 30 minutes doing a drawing and 6 minutes writing a poem. I'm gonna do that each day. And I've been pretty good at that. Sometimes I've gone maybe a little over, but here's a 6-minute drawing. I know a 30-minute drawing that I did a couple of days ago.
Very nice.
And I was really nervous and upset the next day because my trimmer was back. So this is what I did. And I did a little less than 6 minutes because I gave up. And then yesterday or day before yesterday, I guess, I said, well, I'm going to draw it anyway with the trimmer. And so this is what I did that day.
Yeah. Nice.
And so and this is what I did this morning, because I've got some sculptures out in the back in the north yard too. And you know what? There's 30 minutes when I'm not too wired up. I can just do that. And the same with the poems. I get so excited sometimes to write poetry that that kind of energy changes me too.
Yeah. And I think that what that word that you use about energy, that idea to change the energy of the moment for a time, right?
Yeah,
You can't necessarily, you know, there's you can't fix it all, but to take a few moments away from it is good. Yeah. And it's hard for us to do that because life calls out in a lot of ways and says you've got to, you know, look at this, deal with this,
yeah,
right? And so you can't quite escape it, but you can for a moment at least.
and yeah, like was it Judy was saying about driving?
Yeah.
And taking that moment, not to forget about the traffic, but to be able to do some
Yeah.
meditation. Yeah.
To be different in the moment. Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but it works.
Yeah. Because I think it'll change how we deal with the rest of it. Right? It just gets it so that we have a different relationship to the casino around us.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the second chapter because it's talking about voices as well, but it's talking about specifically some of those driving voices that come from way back. And for her, it was dread. She said, dread was my governess growing up, right? Mine was obedience.
Hmm.
You have to obey. As you read through this chapter, did you identify at all some of those driving voices that were there for you? The things that you were told so much that they became the inescapable way you viewed life.
I think mine might have been do your best. And
Uh-huh.
there are times when doing your best really isn't necessary. I mean,
Yeah.
and it takes the fun out of it if you have to do your best every single time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It sometimes makes you different than human, doesn't it?
Well, and there was also an emphasis on doing,
Yeah.
not just, it wasn't be your best self, but do stuff to prove that you're a good person.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Who else had a driving thing drilled into you?
I think mine was somewhere along those same lines as Judy's, that it was more like you have to be working all the time. You have to be doing something worthwhile all the time, you know, producing something, getting good grades, having a good job, having a clean house, blah, 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 you know, so that on the days when I feel like I just don't feel like doing anything, I feel guilty for resting.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I should be accomplishing something. So that kind of, you know, wears in my background all the time of you should be doing something.
Yeah. And, that kind of achievement based teaching, which we do a lot of in America. You're supposed to succeed. You're supposed to do better than your parents. You're supposed to, all of that isn't wrong. You know, changing the world is a good thing, but it's not the only goal in life, is it? And it sometimes gets in the way of some of the other ways we can view and live life.
Well, I identify with that, Doris. Yesterday, I watched 25 words while I was opening my mail. That's okay. But then I let myself watch it and I was doing nothing. And then I felt guilty afterwards.
Yeah. And you shouldn't have to feel guilty about that, should you?
No, it's okay to have fun.
Yeah.
We sure tell ourselves a lot of stories that way, don't we? Though.
Well, first you work and then you play. You don't play first.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what is it?
For me-
Is it the red hat people that say you should have the dessert first?
For
Diane?
me, it's the sense of responsibility. Which ties very strongly with what Judith is saying. You have responsibility for other people and to make sure things work out well for other people. And then I feel like I steal time when I sit down and read a good book that
Yeah.
I like. But I'm getting better at being a thief. So I've been feeling good about my theft.
Good.
And responsibility is a really good thing, but it is not up to you to fix the whole world or any of us, is it?
Yeah.
And so for you to be able to steal that time for you, that's a good thing.
Mhm.
The hard part is that that type of voice calls long and hard, isn't it? I mean,
Mhm.
Dread, she talked about how Dread's still right there by her side, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it helps me, I'm sorry, Jim. Sometimes it helps me to rephrase that idea of stealing time for myself and tell myself I'm giving myself a gift.
Nice.
So I'm giving myself time,
Mhm.
not stealing it from something else. That sometimes helps me not to be so hard on myself.
Yeah. And all of these things that we're talking about are not bad things. It's good to be obedient to. It's good to be responsible for. It's good to, but that also doesn't solve all of the world, right? It's not a panacea for everything that needs to happen in the world or for each of us personally. And so, Judy, what I hear you saying is there's other things you need to claim the fullest part of life. Did I tell you about Doris Lindbergh? She was a 90-something-year-old in Sun City when I very first started pastoring. And she had her list of here's all the things she'd done. She was now in her 90s, so she wasn't able to be all those things in the same way. Right. And so her self-esteem was very low because that's how she'd always measured herself, was by all that.
Wow.
So she was saying, what good am I?
Yes, because all used up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a sad place to be at, if we're only measuring by that insistent voice that says this is the only way to measure, that dread for Miss Lamott.
I read or saw a documentary one time that was really impressive to me on that kind of topic. It was about end of life choices, and they interviewed one woman who had Parkinson's, who was in a care facility and who really couldn't do anything for herself. And they were asking her, what's it like to live like this? And she said, I used to really worry about, I can't do this, I can't do that. What good am I? And then I thought, I can be a blessing to the people who take care of me. I can be kind to them. I can be friendly to them. I cannot be a pain in the neck like some people in my condition are. And so I still have a lot to offer. And that really impressed me that, you would use that to be a gift to other people, even when you can't physically do something.
One of the great truths I've learned in my life, Doris, is that there's a lie we tell regularly in America, and it is a huge lie, and we tell it as if it's a truth, and it's this phrase: it's better to give than it is to receive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know why that's a lie? Because they go hand in hand. And so what your friend has learned is that in that moment, she is being the one that's receiving the gift, which allows that gift to be given. And so she is, in a very real way, making sure that the exchange happens. But she has to choose a different role than what maybe, if she's listened to the lie of better to give than to receive, then she's saying, well, I don't want to be there. I want to do the better thing. Well, to receive is a really good gift.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. Mhm.
So thank you for relating that story. And all of us need to learn that, especially as we pass further away from the most productive years,
Yeah.
right? And into those spaces where we are going to naturally be the receivers more often. And there's nothing wrong with being that. We just have to change, don't we?
Yeah.
But it means we have to keep listening to the world, to life, and listen to it differently.
Actually, we don't have to change. We can choose to be miserable.
We can't choose to be miserable. That's right. But if we do choose to look at it differently, there's some wonderful things that can happen. A friend of mine, Carol is her name, and Carol and I have done more trips down to Peru than any other person. Carol and I have shared a lot of trips down there, and she has been an incredible, amazing force there, by her ability to work and do and all of that, by her ability to relate to people. And she's also not the person that she was 20 years ago, in that she's, her body's 20 years older, right? When we started doing those trips together. And she this last week chose to honor all of her descendants, right? All those grandkids that she has. And it was great, because what she was doing was she was essentially saying, now I'm taking joy out of their doing, not my doing, right? And much of our life, we get to take joy out of, look at the force that I am in the world. So it's been nice to see her doing it very differently, looking at life very differently.
I'm going to have to leave at this point, and I hope that you don't have too many more profound thoughts than I made.
It's recorded. You can listen.
Steadily downhill.
Blessings on you all.
Diane, thank you for being here with us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I was thinking, Jim, as you said that there is a picture that I keep in my mind that was shared years and years ago about, I think it was particularly about mothers being the hub of the wheel, and everything sort of has to go through the mother in the household for things to get done. All the information filters through that person, but you have to relinquish that spot and move to the outer rim.
At some point or another, don't you?
And so you're on the rim, but you're still part of that wheel. You're still an influence, but it's not the. I think George used to call it the switchboard. He said everything had to go through my mom. If you wanted to say anything to my dad, you spoke to my mom first.
Yeah. I loved a little story that she told that said, my son stopped me in my tracks and said, Mom, you're carrying too much and you're going too fast.
Yeah.
Right? And how is life telling you that in some way or another? To do that, you have to get out of the mindset that you have to solve everything, that you're the only one important enough to do it, right? And not that you shouldn't continue to do something, but what is it that today you should be doing? Not what could you do, 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever? What is it that today is calling out of you?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else has gone through this, but I've had to realize that what I thought the Jim of his 20-year-olds, the 20-year-old Jim, what he thought he could fix in the world is not going to be fixed completely. Anybody else have to deal with that? That even though we've made some strides and done some things, that it's not going to be perfectly fixed by the time I die. And so at least part of my job is to empower and help whoever is going to have to keep working on those things.
Phyllis has an
Try not to make
artificial,
it worse.
Say that again, Judy.
And to try not to make it worse.
Yeah, and try not to make it worse. That's right.
Phyllis has an artificial shoulder. She can't raise her hand quite as much as she used to be able to. But she had to get it good enough that she could reach over and put the seatbelt on to clip it in. Otherwise, she couldn't drive. She could be a passenger because she could reach over with your right hand instead of your left, but your left hand to drive, you had to get it back over on the right side. Is that right, PJ? I can't remember left or right.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I practiced.
Yeah, you have to practice a lot.
I still practice every day. The surgery was about 3 years ago, and I still do the exercises. Some of them, and some I've gotten new ones when I was going to the club. And it's helped me keep going. But they told me I wouldn't have 100% back, that I would have like 80 to 90.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I can't scratch my back anymore. I have to go around this way. Or I get my husband with.
That's right. You make the adjustments. There was a particular way that Anne Lamott described her governess that I think was helpful. She said that the governess pretends that her job was to keep me from dying, but actually it is to keep me from living. And so what I hear from that story, PJ, is that you could just be saying, I'm just making sure that death's a little further away. No, you're trying to figure out what it is that you need to have as full a life as what you can. How do we do the things to choose life? Not just keep death away.
I had to do the same thing with my knee when I had my knee replaced. So now on that same side, knee and shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's a constant challenge.
Yep. But all of these are constant challenges, aren't they? Because of whatever obstacles are in our path.
That's right.
How is it that what gives life to you right now? How is it that we focus on that? So tell me some of the things that right now are helping you to see life.
One of the things that helps me is I volunteer with the Inn on Sunday afternoons, and they're doing it at a motel now, so there's no cleaning and there's no cooking food, so it's not a very hard task except for the times you have to interact with people. And on the surface, it would seem really frustrating because my Spanish is not very good and my Portuguese is non-existent, and we have a lot of people from Brazil. And so we're going back and forth with Google Translate on our phones all afternoon. But there's something about being there that's just really calming to me. It gets me out of my frantic everyday things. I have no to-do list except to hang out with people and answer their questions. And it's really helped me. So when I get in a big tizzy over how dirty my house is or whatever, I go there for the afternoon and I come back and I'm tired, but I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
So seems counterintuitive to be frustrated with communication all afternoon and to come home relaxed afterwards.
That is great.
Yeah. The book said, tasks bring us presence. And I think that's at least what I hear partially there, is that you had an important task. You know, you weren't going to solve everything, but you were there for the time, and that gave you presence with them and for you. Nice. How about the rest of you? How are you living today? What gives you life in the midst of?
The children in the neighborhood are more visible than they were during the lockdown. They're not free roaming around, but they're out in their yards and they're taking walks with their families and things like that that they didn't used to do.
Yeah.
Or didn't do for a long time. And just the sight of them and seeing how much they've grown.
Mm-hmm.
And in that respect, even the candle lighting that is done by the kids on the video, on the Sunday morning services, seeing the differences from when we last saw them is just amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to adjust my eyesight so that I don't look down too far.
Yeah. Just before the class started, I was sitting with Claire. She came up here with her mama, and her legs are about 3 feet longer than what they were a year ago. And she is growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk with her because I want to sit with her and the other kids her age and do a confirmation class come the fall. And so I wanted to start that, you know, get that into her head. But it was just neat to just sit with her and see, reconnect to this person that I think I know, but that is a year older than the one I know. And to allow myself to be back in that relationship with her.
You know, Jim, you might want to check with Judy Mitchell's Steve, because he's going into middle school too.
Nice. I will do that.
Just in having him be part of that group
Thank you.
when it gets started. He could have a whole harem, I think.
Yeah. Most of the kids we're talking about so far that would be part of this group are girls, and so he might really enjoy that.
Yeah. He's a good-looking guy, I'll tell you, and a swimmer, so he's got the physique going.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Because of the background noise.
Yeah, I hear
What
that
else?
too.
What else gives life? What else?
Acting in a play.
What?
Acting in a play. Take
Absolutely.
somebody else's part. Jim, I played Hallie Newsom in our town for 7 years.
Yeah.
I did it in high school and 4 years at Pepperdine.
And here's
3
the
years
good,
at Pepperdine.
here's the good news, Sam, is when Nancy does that play, maybe you can be him again.
Maybe I could read again. Yeah.
Yep.
I'll
Right.
try out. He's a good transition actor because it's between each major scene and how he comes in and delivers milk.
Yep. Yep. And in some ways, that's what we're looking at, is how do we resurrect creative arts? Are we, maybe we're not ready to start doing, huge productions again. So maybe we do smaller things, right? More us involved things, more of our members in them, right?
And maybe with less perfection in mind.
And maybe with less perfection in mind. That's exactly right.
That's right.
That is not a bad thing, is it?
I stopped by Park Mall, Park Place Mall the other day, walked in where they have that community theater that they're doing, or I don't know what, all musicals, I think. And I said, well, how's it going? It says, we've been packed and we're booked solid, and we're expanding the stage area, and we're expanding the area for people for the audience. I think that's so good.
Yeah. I think there's a good question to ask yourself. And usually we ask it, well, I might ask it to the kids that I've got in my confirmation class. What are you going to be when you grow up? All right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do as you reach this thing called adulthood? But I think we should ask that on a regular basis. What are you going to do when you reach this thing called 30 years old? What are you going to do when you hit this thing called 62 years old, right? And you're able to retire. What are you going to do at whatever phase? How are you going to grow up at each of these moments? Right? Because we in some ways we want to say we're already the developed human being. Maybe we're not. Maybe there's a new development that's there.
That's right. The back of my t-shirt, one of them says, forget your age and live your life.
Yeah, yeah. And that idea of living life, I think is huge. Not just dying. How are you going to live right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe just as important, how are you going to give life to others as you live? Right? Because how many have had a 90-year-old in a wheelchair smile at you because they chose to give life in that way, which is a smile? It's a great
Or
gift.
they can be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right? Maybe they can't do whatever it is they used to do or be, but they continue to live. And we can choose that as well. These two chapters are much richer in my head because of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
The last two chapters were much easier for me to like. These two, I kind of went through and said, oh, geez, what do I, but thank you for enriching them.
That's good. We've got to go, Jim.
Yeah,
We've got an appointment coming up at 11 o'clock.
I'm going as well. Don't forget, next week, if you're coming to class, have a good time by yourself.
That's right.
All right. And then we'll come back in 2 weeks and we'll do the next two chapters. All right.
That's good.
All right.
Take care, my friends.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.